Good morning. Today we are concluding our study of the book of Joshua. I said in the beginning we'll take it a little slow and then the rest will go fast. These past few chapters, a lot of repetition, a lot of battles and war. And here we are in chapter 14 through 24. And I would probably focus most of our attention to the last two chapters because these are very important for our study of Joshua, but also our study and understanding of the Old Testament. A lot of these themes, again, come up again and again and again. And after a while, you might get tired of me saying this, but what can I do? This is part of our study of Scripture. So here we have the book of Joshua, chapter 14 to 24. I do want to mention something about chapter I think it's 18. Let me see here. No, not 18. Oh, so chapter 20. Chapter 20, we have the cities of refuge. And we came across this before. Again, another theme that we see before in the book of Numbers. Remember, there was these cities of refuge that were given to people, especially for foreigners, for enemies who were in the area, or for family members who were being attacked. There were cities of refuge where they would go, where they would be protected. They would get food and shelter. And here again, we have the same thing in chapter 20. I'll just read a little bit. But we also encountered this before back in Numbers chapter 35. So here we are. The Lord said to Joshua, "Tell the Israelites to designate the cities of refuge as I instructed you through Moses, so that anyone who kills a person accidentally and unintentionally may flee there and find protection from the avenger of blood." Remember, we talked about blood vengeance. So for example, if I murdered someone in a different family, they have every right to come and kill me. Well, I could flee to a city of refuge and seek protection. This was kind of a humane way to preserve life, but I guess it didn't always work out. But here we have this in verse 1 and 2. I'll read a little bit more. It says, this is verse 4. When they flee to one of these cities, they are to stand at the entrance of the city gate and state their case before the elders of the city. And again, remember the gates? We talked about this before. The gates of the city were not just things to protect the city, but these big, big gates were actually there. There's a marketplace. People would buy and sell at the gates. And the gates where people would learn about news, information. They would learn about latest wars or what's going on in the world. And also they would have the nobles and the judges hear court cases and hear these things at the city gates. So it's very, very important. I'll read a little bit more. It says, verse 5, if the avenger of blood comes in pursuit, the elders must not surrender the fugitive, because the fugitive killed the neighbor unintentionally and without malice. In other words, it was an accident, or it maybe was self-defense. So that's what the cities of refuge were for. Then in chapter 21, we talk about the city of the Levites, about these areas that were given to the Levites as part of their inheritance, because they were the priests, they were the rulers of the people as far as worship and ritual go. So you have that going on. And then I want to kind of focus our attention to chapter 22 to 24, because these two chapters are the end of the book. And usually remember, the beginning of any book of Scripture and the end of the books of Scripture are very, very important. These give us the themes, they give us the kind of the storylines, and where the next book is going, because we get hints along the way when we read the beginnings and the endings of the books of Scripture. And here we have chapter 22. It says here that Joshua summoned the Reubenites and the Gadites and half tribe of Manasseh and said to them, "You have done all that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded, and you have obeyed me in everything I commanded. For a long time now, to this very day, you have not deserted your fellow Israelites, but to carry out the mission the Lord gave you." It's like Joshua is giving them a pep talk. He's getting older. He's at the end of his life, and he's kind of telling the younger generation, you've done well, you followed God, and this is what's going to happen. And he continues. It says, verse 4, now the Lord your God has given them rest, as he promised. Return to your homes in the land that Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you on the other side of the Jordan. But be very careful to keep the commandment and the law that Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you, to love the Lord your God and to walk in obedience to him and keep his commands, to hold fast to him and to serve him with all your heart and all your soul. Very important verses. Very important. Joshua reminds the people what to do. I want to read that again. It's so important. It's verse 5. Be very careful to keep the commandment and the law that Moses, the servant of your God, gave you, to love the Lord, to walk in obedience to him, to keep his commandments, and to hold fast to him and serve him with all your heart and all your soul. So very important. And it goes on, it says, Joshua blessed them and sent them away to their homes, and they went away. So very, very important. So then we have chapter 23. Joshua says goodbye. He's old. He knows death is upon him. And these speeches are very common in Scripture. We had this before with Moses at the end of Deuteronomy. He gathers all the leaders and gives them his talk. He tells them what's going to happen. He warned them that he couldn't go into the land with them. Here we have it again with Joshua. In the book of Acts, for example, I had recordings on the book of Acts earlier. St. Paul in the book of Acts gathers the people, the elders, and he tells them, he blesses them, he thanks them for the ministry, but he knows he's going to Rome. He knows he's going to be arrested and put to death, so he gives them a final talk as well. So again, these things come up again and again and again in Scripture. Very, very important, these little speeches here. Chapter 23, verse 1. After a long time had passed, the Lord had given Israel rest from all the enemies around them. Joshua, by then a very old man, summoned all Israel, the elders, the leaders, the judges, and the officials. See, remember, it's the four: the elders, the leaders, the judges, and the officials. We have, remember, number 3, number 4, 7, 12, and multiples of those are very, very important. And don't forget, remember, Joshua started as a young boy. He started with Moses back in Exodus, and here he is now in the book of Joshua, an old man. So we saw Joshua early on briefly in Exodus. We saw him in Numbers with Caleb as they went into the promised land as spies. Then we saw him in Deuteronomy, and now we have him here in Joshua. So it's a long, long storyline he has. You yourselves, this is verse 3, you yourselves have seen everything the Lord your God has done to all these nations for your sake. It was the Lord your God who fought for you. Remember how I allotted as inheritance for your tribe all the land of nations that remain, the nations I conquered between the Jordan and the Mediterranean in the west. The Lord your God himself will push them out for your sake. He will drive them out before you, and you will take possession of their land as the Lord promised you. And it goes on. It's so important. It says, verse 6, be strong, it says. Be careful to obey all that is written in the book of the law of Moses. We heard this so many times. And after a while, you wonder, why are we hearing this so many times? Remember the law of Moses. Be courageous. Do not fear. We hear this again and again and again because Israelites forget. It's like a parent reminding the child, don't forget your raincoat, it's raining outside. Don't forget to wear rain boots, it's raining outside. Don't forget your umbrella. It's a constant reminder that parents do for little children. It's the same thing here. that Joshua is reminding them about the law of Moses. It says, verse 7, do not associate with these nations that remain among you. Do not invoke the names of their gods. In other words, don't worship them or swear by them. You must not serve them or bow down to them, but you are to hold fast to the Lord your God as you have until now. And then it goes on. We see here. Then chapter 24 here is the renewal of the covenant at Shechem. Again, Joshua renews the covenant one more time. It's like they have to do this again because Israelites are forgetful. And it goes on. It's a long, long speech. And also he's reminding, he goes back. It's very important too, because we also see this in other books of scripture, like in Hebrews, for example, in the New Testament. Joshua goes back and reminds the people all the way back from Moses and Aaron, and he reviews all the things that have happened. It's kind of way of saying it's like a family tree. Go way back to great grandpa. You explain who all these people are. Same thing here. He goes back to Moses and Aaron. He goes back to crossing of the Red Sea. He talks about conquering Jericho and Ai and all the cities. So it's a kind of like a remembrance of what happened. And then he ends it this way. After his speech, the whole chapter is this long, long speech. It ends this way, verse 29. It says, after these things, Joshua, the son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died at the age of 110, which means a very, very long time. That's what this kind of means, these big numbers like this. And they buried him in the land of his inheritance at Timnath Serah, in the hill country of Ephraim, north of Mount Gaash. And it goes on. Israel served the Lord throughout the lifetime of Joshua, and all the elders who outlived him, who experienced everything the Lord had done for Israel. And Joseph's bones, remember Joseph? Joseph died back in Genesis. And we heard about this before. Remember Joseph and his brothers when he died? And we learned in the book of Genesis that Joseph's bones were carried to Egypt. And then they carried Joseph's bones the whole time. Remember, they put Joseph's bones in a box and they carried Joseph way, way back from Genesis. And here he appears in Joshua. Again, we heard about him in Genesis. His bones are carried Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and now we're in Joshua. It's a long, long time. It says, verse 32, Joseph's bones, which the Israelites had brought up from Egypt, were buried at Shechem, an attractive land that Jacob bought for 100 pieces of silver from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem. And this became the inheritance of Joseph's descendants. And this means basically that Joseph's bones, that Joseph died in Genesis, but the promise to the people that God will deliver them and give them a land, finally for Joseph, he gets rest. Joseph entered the promised land, not living, but in his bones, in his death. He arrived there in the promised land, and they were buried, and that land became an inheritance to the tribe of Joseph. So it's like Joseph finally gets what was given to him way, way back, was promised in Genesis. So again, in the scripture, time is just so long. It's like a long haul. It's not something short. It's a very, very long time. So patience is required. Utter patience is required. And it ends this way in verse 33. And Eleazar, the son of Aaron, died and was buried at Gibeah, which had been allotted for his son Phinehas in the hill country of Ephraim. And remember Phinehas, we counted him back in Numbers. So this is the end of the book of Joshua. I hope you like this book. It's a very different book than we saw in the Torah. It's a different kind of literature. We saw how the land was given to the people, how Joshua was a leader way back in Exodus as a young leader with Moses, and now as an old man and finally dying. And next book we'll study is the book of Judges, and this will be a new type of literature. And as we get book by book by book by book, the story of Israel advances and develops and we see what happens to this people of God. Thank you.